So there are a lot of really great sources on, like if you Google, and I know that sounds weird, but if you Google rabbit line breeding, you can kind of get into the deep darkness that is rabbit genetics. One of my favorites is the Mick Green Acres rabbit breeding system, because not only does it talk about outcrossing, close breeding, and line breeding, it talks about degrees of separation when it comes to breeding. So instead of just talking about like simple line breeding where you would breed the daughter to the father or the son to the mother, they go into degrees of separation and how well you can use that. So for instance, he talks about 3rd degree separation and use in line breeding, where you would take a kit and breed it to their great grandparent or to their great aunt and uncle, and normally how that's a far enough separation to where you don't get a lot of the nastier attributes of using 0 degrees of separation. And if you want a good laugh while learning about just like basic line breeding principles, the Mad Habit Micro Farm has a hilarious essay about how line breeding and inbreeding works. And their humor is just gold while still being super educational. It really kept my interest, really loved it. And as always, this is the simplified version of the chart I use when it comes to line breeding, whereas A is the dad, B is the mom, and all of the other letters are the sequential generations until you get to your outcross at J. And remember, if we talk about degrees of separation, J can be a rabbit from your own barn as long as you're looking at like 3 lines of separation, or you're looking at something like great aunts, great uncles, or if you're smart and you start off with 2 bucks, 2 does, you can have J already in your barn in the form of working on another line. So people are willing to pay more for that kind of thing. I've had people offer me quite a pretty penny for Strawberry because of how many times he's won Best of Show, even though he's a fat ass who got dequalified for 2 ounces over. I'm still not letting it go, but I digress. I've also had 4-H parents who will see Strawberry and automatically want his offspring as soon as they pop out. And I see nothing wrong for paying more for a proven animal. So for the grand champion, or for the best of show, for a rabbit that has proven themselves. But buying unproven animals from best of show and grand champion animals does not guarantee that you'll have good stock. So if any of you have watched my 7-week evaluation of my previous litter, that's out of Coco and Solstice. I couldn't show Solstice for a very long time because she had a white mark on her forehead. It did eventually grow out, and maybe someday I'll put her on a show table because she does have amazing type. But Coco, who is Solstice's dad and the rabbit we bred her to, her kits was a mixed bag. About 50-50. We had 50% of the kits that were trash, and the other 50% that are turning out to be really great. But you don't want to gamble on what ifs. And to me, it's kind of a red flag if somebody says something along the lines of, oh, both their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents were all best of show animals or grand champion animals. That's good to know, but you shouldn't buy something based off of that alone. My Vienna marked blue, my blue with the ice blue eyes, I could say that. She comes from grand champion show lines. She comes from best of show lines. You put her on a table, she's going to disqualify you. Just simply because of her eyes. Always buy the rabbit and not the pedigree. But either way, people do misconstrue the idea of them being from champion lines, and they are willing to pay more, or they do want those offspring. So if y'all are coming from my live, I did not disappear off the face of the planet. My phone died. But this isn't a stupid question. And there's nothing wrong with crossbreeding. But, and hear me out, if you're going to be spending the money on the rabbits, both to buy them and for food, why not stick to pure breeds? And the reason is you have a larger market for profit if you keep pure breed rabbits and you keep a pedigree on them, especially if you breed for show quality, because you're more likely to have a customer base that wants to buy your rabbits. Not to mention, you know what you'll be looking for in the breed. I can tell you right now, as the owner of both of these breeds, Californians grow out way better than Rex. And Rex have a very special fur type that is very sought after because of how soft it is and how luxurious it is. And I've seen these crosses before, they're not the best. They kind of come out with the worst possible mix of the two. And somebody's gonna argue hybrid vigor with me all day. But the thing is, Californians, I have yet to find a meat rabbit that grows out as fast as Californians with a better meat to bone ratio. Because everyone always wants to argue crossbred vigor with Flemish giants, but then they don't want to bring up the fact that bones grow quicker in those breeds than the meat. Because you'll get a rabbit that's very heavy, but it doesn't have the best meat yield. So in my opinion, crossbreeds in my opinion are a waste of time. Especially when you can get a better, more reliant outcome in comparison to having crossbreeds. But if that's all you have in your area, or that's all you can afford, it's better than nothing. And keep grinding and keep doing what you do. So I've talked about this a few times because I love shows and I love showing. The problem is when you're asking what are they going to look for, there are so many answers because there are so many breeds. Which is where the standard of perfection comes in. And as you can see, mine is very beat up. Because every breed has its own standard of perfection. Because every breed is different. Even if they look the same, they're looking for different things in every single breed. Because each breed might have a different color or a different pose or a different recommendation or type or fur type. Like, it gets as picky as what male and eye colors are appropriate to the color of the fur. It's all very nitpicky, but oh, I love it so much. So if you're really interested in it or you want to look through it, I would definitely look into the standard of perfection. Or if y'all have a certain breed you're interested in, I can start pulling them either from the SOP or my barn and go more in depth on each breed. But I will tell you right now, I am not good with lops, and please don't. I will tag one of my friends instead because, again, I've been over it a million times before. I don't understand crowns. I'm trying really hard. The crown thing just confuses me. But if you're specifically interested in one of my 5 breeds, I would be happy to sit down and show you exactly what a judge would be looking for. So line breeding is one of those controversial things where some people absolutely love it, some people absolutely hate it, and I absolutely love it. At least when it comes to rabbits. You see, with line breeding rabbits, what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to predict the outcome of what you're getting. And when you line breed, you're bringing out the very best and the very worst qualities. And you've probably heard breeders before say something along the lines of breed the best and eat the rest, or keep the best and eat the rest, something along those lines. It's different depending on who you talk to. That's because that's what we do. You see, line breeding makes it to where your more recessive genes come to the forefront, both good and bad. So the bad things are already there. So the things that are caused by inbreeding, it's just because the recessives are pulled further and further to the surface. Such as malocclusion, so where their teeth aren't lining right, and if you see that when you're line breeding, it's already there. So as long as you're heavily culling, it's okay to line breed. And there are also lines of deviation. So if you're talking about, the first line, so you're talking about siblings to each other or kit to parent or that kind of thing. So the very first line of deviation, that's some pretty heavy line breeding. But we get into the second, the third, the fourth. When you get to the 4th line, you're talking about breeding kits to their great-great-grandparents, right? Which only takes about 2 to 3 years. It's almost like it isn't line breeding because that rabbit only shows up on the rabbit's pedigree once, even though they're very, very distantly related. Or you can line breed using cousins and aunts and great uncles and great aunts. Because rabbits produce so quickly and they reach an age of maturity so quickly, you're very easily able to line breed without even telling on a pedigree. Unless, of course, you do what I do and you do closer lines of deviation, such as parents to kits. The rule of thumb I was always taught is a rabbit should never show up more than 3 times on a pedigree. But I still go by the rule of don't breed the pedigree, breed the rabbit. Don't keep the pedigree, keep the rabbit. Meaning, doesn't really matter what the pedigree says. If the rabbit looks good and it's producing good, then it's good. Now, of course, you're going to need a genetic outcrossing every once in a while because you do want to bring in new blood every once in a while because eventually you're going to get to the point where you're getting more bad than good. But you kind of got to play it by ear. And this is like the really dumbed down version of it. Like, I can go into like the really deep nitty gritty stuff and get real nerdy on you, but most people kind of like glaze over in the eyes when I get really deep into like my biology, ecology stuff. So if y'all want to hear more in depth on how I line breed, I can definitely do it, but prepare for the eye glazing. So we're going to be respectful to this commenter because they actually are having a really good debate with me and we're having a really good conversation. With that being said, I thought we could talk about urine scalding and other problems that you have on solid bottom cages that you don't have on wire. So there's this misconception, and it's shown even right here in the comments, that if you clean a rabbit's cage, you don't have to worry about them getting certain issues. But the problem is you're not there to clean that cage constantly. And even sitting in that waste for 8, 10, 12 hours, depending on how long you work, can be detrimental to the rabbit's skin and fur. I know it sounds dramatic, but urine scalding can happen in an instant. And if sat too long to sit on that skin on a solid bottom cage, that urine and fecal matter cause burning. And you can see that burning not only of the bottoms of the feet, but we often see it up the hindquarters and on the sides. And of course, there is mitigation that you can do, such as litter box training or putting the rabbit on a surface above where they're using the restroom, but that doesn't guarantee that your rabbit would use those surfaces appropriately even after being trained. Gigi is litter box trained. Guess where he likes to sit? If you said in his litter box, you are correct. So you know what we did to his litter box? We put a wire grating on top of it so that he was up above the waist. Now, it's not possible to instantly clean up that matter when it comes to 1 or 2 rabbits. So when you're in a rabbitry with anywhere from 5 to 100 rabbits, it's nearly impossible. Which is why grading is used at Texas A&M for every single experiment. Unless the experiment is questioning the benefits of solid versus wire bottom cages, you will see that a control in every single experiment is wire bottoms. And that's because it is an industry standard for keeping those animals healthy and safe. We see a multitude of benefits to wire, to include better health of the animal in general. And when we're talking about better health, we're talking about flesh quality of the animal, both in meat production and how their feet look. We're looking at the inhalants of ammonia and other chemicals because it's easier to clean. We're looking at healthier animals that aren't spreading as much disease because their waste is properly taken care of and those metal wires are easier to sanitize in those situations. A lot of solid bottoms are made out of plastic, those little Katie cages. And plastic is very hard to properly sanitize because when it gets scratched, the bacteria go into the plastic and build. All this to say, there are benefits to wire bottom cages compared to solid bottom cages. So we do feed the butchering extras to our dogs, and then we do supplement raw feeding in with their kibble, especially our 2 huskies because they have trouble keeping weight. But in all, we have 4 dogs, and out of those 4 dogs, Thor and Kiwi are a year old, Balto is 3 months, 4 months old, something like that, and Panda is 11 years old. So with Panda, it's not a problem. You can leave him with a litter of bunnies, and he will just lay there and pout. The 1-year-olds have learned you stay out of the barn, and every once in a while they need a reminder of, get out, but they're pretty good. Balto is a puppy and is dumb, so he gets training on that, and he is not allowed outside when I am in the barn just to mitigate any problems, but we do train on sitting and staying outside the barn with him. With that being said, we don't have a problem with our dogs, with our permapets, with the rabbits inside. Even when I have kits that I have shelved inside, it's not really a problem. And that's even with my husky Kiwi. When I butcher, she will lay right behind me and wait patiently for her cut. I have found when it comes to feeding extras, it just takes training and patience. And boundaries are also super important when it comes to dogs. And of course, you have to take into account breed and personality and intelligence, I say as Balto tries to bite my hand. But with a little bit of training and work, I believe any dog has the capabilities of being a good farm dog.